I stumbled upon the folder while organizing their taxes, expecting receipts but finding their new will instead. Christian got the house, the savings, and the car. I got absolutely nothing because I was stable. So, I quietly canceled every single utility auto payment and waited for the darkness to hit. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Kin and Karma. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The silence in my parents' home office usually brought me a sense of focus, a familiar comfort from years of handling their administrative lives. But today, the silence felt heavy, pressing against my eardrums like the air before a thunderstorm. I was sitting at my father Arthur's massive oak desk, a piece of furniture I had paid to have restored for his 65th birthday 3 years ago, surrounded by stacks of receipts, utility bills, and tax documents. It was April, tax season, the time of year when I ritually took 2 days off from my job as a senior financial analyst to ensure my parents' filings were perfect. I did this so they wouldn't have to pay an accountant, saving them roughly $600 a year. "Sarah, do you need more coffee?" My mother, Nancy, called out from the kitchen. Her voice was light, airy, completely detached from the bomb I was holding in my trembling hands. "No, Mom, I'm fine," I choked out. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, thin, brittle like dry leaves stepping on pavement. I wasn't fine. I felt physically ill. A cold sweat had broken out across the back of my neck, dampening the collar of my blouse. My stomach churned with a mixture of nausea and a sharp, stabbing betrayal that made it hard to draw a full breath. In my hands wasn't a tax form. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope that had been tucked inadvertently into the folder labeled 2024 Assets and Liabilities. It was titled, in bold, legal font, Last WILL and Testament of Arthur and Nancy redacted. I shouldn't have read it. The ethical part of my brain, the part that played by the rules and was always the good daughter, told me to put it back. But the date on the cover was from just 3 months ago. Curious and perhaps a bit protective considering I managed their finances, I had flipped it open, expecting to see the standard division we had vaguely discussed years ago. A 50-50 split of the assets, with me likely acting as the executor since Christian couldn't be trusted to water a plant, let alone manage an estate. I was wrong. I skipped past the legal jargon, my eyes scanning for names. I found them quickly. Article IV, Disposition of Property. Section A, Real Property. We give, devise, and bequeath our primary residence, located at address, entirely to our son, Christian, to ensure his future security. I blinked, I reread it, the house. The house that I had paid to have re-roofed last summer because Dad claimed he was short on cash. The house where I paid the property taxes for the last 4 years. My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept reading, desperate for some correction, some balance in the next paragraph. Section B, Residual Estate. We give, devise, and bequeath all remaining tangible personal property, cash, bank accounts, stocks, and bonds to our son, Christian. And then, the line that broke me. The line that didn't just cut me out, but erased my entire existence as a daughter who had sacrificed everything for them. Section C, Omission. We have intentionally made no provision in this will for our daughter, Sarah. This is not out of a lack of love, but because Sarah is financially stable, has a successful career, and does not require the assistance that her brother, Christian, needs to establish himself. The room spun. I actually had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from sliding out of the chair. It wasn't about the money. I didn't need their money. I had my own 401k, my own investments, my own modest condo. It was the principle. It was the invalidation of decades of loyalty. It was the explicit statement that my success, which I had built despite them constantly draining my resources, was now the weapon being used to punish me. Because I worked hard, I got nothing. Because Christian refused to work, he got everything. I looked up at the framed photo on the desk. It was a picture of the 4 of us from a decade ago. I was smiling, looking tired. Christian was grinning, looking well-rested. "Sarah." Nancy appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Did you hear me? I asked if you wanted a sandwich for lunch. Christian and Willow are coming over soon, and I'm making that roast beef he likes. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. I saw the lines around her eyes, the comfortable sweater she was wearing, a sweater I bought her for Christmas. I saw the woman who had just signed a legal document saying I didn't matter because I was stable. I slowly closed the folder, sliding it back into the stack of papers as if it were just another receipt. I forced a smile that felt like a rictus of pain across my face. "No, Mom," I said, my voice steady now, hardened by a sudden, freezing resolve. "I don't think I'll be staying for lunch. I'm actually feeling a bit sick." "Oh," she said, her face falling, but only slightly. "Well, that's a shame. Christian will be disappointed he missed you. He wanted to ask you something." I bet he did, I thought. Probably wanted money. "I'm sure he did." I stood up, gathering my purse. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of a terminal illness. It was a deliberate, calculated excision of my value from their lives. I walked out of that house, the house that wasn't mine and never would be, and I knew one thing for certain. The Bank of Sarah was officially closed. The drive back to my condo was a blur of gray highway and red taillights. I didn't turn on the radio. I couldn't handle the noise. My mind was replaying the text of the will over and over again, dissecting it like a forensic accountant looking for fraud. Sarah is financially stable. They used my stability as an excuse. They penalized my competence. When I finally unlocked the door to my own apartment, my sanctuary, paid for with my own money, with no help from anyone, I didn't collapse on the couch. I didn't cry. The shock had bypassed tears and gone straight to a cold, vibrating anger. I felt like I was vibrating on a frequency only dogs could hear. I went straight to my laptop and opened it on my kitchen island. I didn't even take off my coat. I logged into my bank account. The dashboard loaded, showing the usual healthy balance, but my eyes went immediately to the scheduled transfers and bill pay tab. For 5 years, since Dad retired and Mom claimed their pension wasn't stretching as far as they thought, I had taken over their major utilities. It started small. Dad had forgotten the electric bill 1 month, and they faced a shut-off notice. I paid it to save them the embarrassment. Then he asked if I could just handle it for a few months until his pension adjustment came through. A few months turned into 5 years. I clicked on the recipients list. Dad's electric autopay, on Dad's water sewer autopay, on Dad's gas heating autopay, on Dad's internet cable package autopay, on. I looked at the amounts. Last month alone, their electric bill was $240. The water was $85. The premium sports package, cable bundle that Christian insisted they needed for when he came over was $185. That was over $500 a month. $6,000 a year. That didn't even include the groceries. Every Sunday, I did a Costco run for them. I'd buy bulk paper towels, laundry detergent, steaks, snacks for Christian, wine for Mom. I usually dropped $300 a week on their food. That was another $15,000 a year. I did the mental math. I was subsidizing their lives to the tune of $20,000 annually. And in return, they had decided I deserved 0% of the estate because I didn't need help. My finger hovered over the mouse. Click Dad's Electric, Edit, Cancel Autopay, Confirm. A little green checkmark appeared, Auto Payment Canceled. I felt a surge of adrenaline, sharp and electric. Click Dad's Water Sewer, Cancel Autopay, Confirm. Click Dad's Gas Heating, Cancel Autopay, Confirm. Click Dad's Internet Cable, Cancel Autopay, Confirm. I sat back, breathing hard. I hadn't shut the power off today. That would be cruel and immediate. I simply stopped paying. The utility companies would send a bill to the house address in a few weeks when the cycle ended. Dad, who hadn't looked at a bill in 5 years because Sarah handles it, would ignore it. Then they would send a past due notice. He would ignore that too, assuming I had it covered. Then they would send a shut-off notice. And then the lights would go out. My phone buzzed on the counter, making me jump. It was a text from Nancy. "Mom, Christian and Willow are here. Willow brought that potato salad you like. Are you sure you can't come back? Christian says he needs to talk to you about a business opportunity." I stared at the screen. A business opportunity. That was code for Christian needs a loan he will never pay back. I typed back, keeping it short. Me, no, feeling worse, stayed home, enjoy the lunch. I put the phone face down. I walked over to the fridge and opened it. It was sparse. I had been so busy making sure their fridge was stocked with premium cuts of meat and organic vegetables that I had forgotten to buy groceries for myself. I had a carton of eggs, some spinach, and a bottle of white wine. I took out the wine. As I poured a glass, I thought about the text of the will again. To ensure his future security. They wanted to secure Christian's future. They wanted to make sure their golden boy, who at 34 still hadn't held a job for longer than 6 months, was taken care of. They were terrified of what would happen to him when they were gone. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They assumed their lifestyle was funded by their pension. They assumed the lights stayed on and the fridge stayed full by magic or by the modest government checks they received. They had lived in a bubble of comfort that I constructed, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. They thought they were cutting me out of their future. They didn't realize that by doing so, they had just cut themselves out of my present. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted like liberation. To understand why the discovery of that will felt like a physical assault, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the dynamic of the house of Arthur and Nancy. I was the mistake. Not in a we didn't want you way, but in a we didn't plan for you to be this way. I was quiet, studious, and fiercely independent from a young age. I didn't need them to help me with homework. I didn't need them to bail me out of trouble. I got a scholarship to college. I worked 3 jobs to pay for my apartment. I graduated with honors and was hired by a top firm immediately. Christian, born 4 years later, was the miracle. He was loud, charming, and utterly helpless. He was the kid who smiled his way out of detention. The kid who crashed the car and had Dad buy him a new one the next week because he learned his lesson. He never learned his lesson. When I was 25 and saving for my first condo, Christian was 21 and getting arrested for a DUI. My parents drained their emergency fund to get him a high-powered lawyer. Who replenished that fund over the next 2 years? I did. When I was 30 and getting a promotion, Christian was 26 and launching a startup that was essentially a pyramid scheme selling vitamin water. He needed seed capital. Mom cried until I wrote him a check for $5,000. I never saw a dime of it back, and the vitamins sat in their garage until they expired. And then there was Willow. Christian had met Willow 6 months ago. She was 24, an influencer with 3,000 followers who posted primarily about manifesting abundance and soft living. She didn't work. She didn't study. She just existed in Christian's orbit, amplifying his worst traits. 2 days after I found the will, and 2 days after I canceled the bills, I had to see them. It was Dad's birthday dinner. I couldn't skip it without raising suspicion, and I needed to maintain the facade just a little longer. I needed the utility companies to do the heavy lifting for me. I arrived at the house with a bottle of scotch for Dad, a cheaper brand than I usually bought, but he wouldn't notice. The house was warm. The lights were blazing. The TV was on in the living room, blaring the sports package I had just canceled. "Sarah!" Christian shouted from the recliner. He didn't get up. He was wearing a designer tracksuit that I knew cost more than my car payment. "Long time no see, sis. You look tired. You working too hard." "Someone has to," I said, keeping my voice neutral as I walked into the kitchen. Willow was sitting at the kitchen island, picking at a tray of shrimp cocktail, shrimp I had bought on my last run. She was wearing a massive, glittery engagement ring. "Wait, engagement ring? Oh, Sarah," Mom gushed, rushing over to hug me. Did you see the news?" She grabbed Willow's hand and thrust it in my face. The diamond was huge. It wasn't perfect quality, it looked cloudy, but it was big. "Christian proposed." Mom squealed. "Isn't it wonderful?" I looked at Christian. He was grinning, leaning back in the recliner with the confidence of a king. "Congrats," I said, the word tasting like ash. "When did this happen?" "Last night," Willow said, her voice a vocal fry that grated on my nerves. "He took me to that French place downtown. It was so romantic. We're going to have the wedding in the fall. We want it in the backyard here. It's perfect for a rustic chic vibe. That sounds expensive, I said, setting the scotch down. Well, that's actually what we wanted to talk to you about, Christian said, finally standing up and sauntering into the kitchen. He wrapped an arm around Willow. We're going to need some help with the deposits. And Willow and I are looking at getting a place, but until then, Mom and Dad said we could move into the master suite upstairs. I froze. The master suite, where are Mom and Dad sleeping? We're taking the guest room, Dad said, walking in from the backyard. He looked older, more tired, but his eyes were shining with pride as he looked at Christian. The kids need the space. Starting a family soon, hopefully. He winked. I looked at Arthur. You're giving up your bedroom. It's just temporary, Nancy said quickly, sensing the tension. Christian needs to focus on his new venture without worrying about rent. What venture is that? I asked. Crypto mining, Christian said, puffing out his chest. I just need to buy the rigs. That's actually the business opportunity I texted you about. I need about 10 grand for the hardware. But the returns, Sarah, the returns are exponential. Willow chimed in, popping another one of my shrimp into her mouth. Yeah, Sarah, you have that fancy finance job. 10 grand is like nothing to you. Think of it as an investment in your brother's future. An investment in his future, the same language from the will. I looked at the four of them. My parents, displacing themselves in their own home to accommodate a son who refused to grow up and a future daughter-in-law who saw me as nothing more than an ATM. They were all looking at me with expectancy. The golden child gaze. They didn't ask if I could help. They were just waiting for me to pull out the checkbook. They had disinherited me. They had literally signed a legal document saying I deserved nothing. And now they were asking for $10,000 to fund a crypto rig that would drive up the electric bill, an electric bill they didn't know I had just stopped paying. A dark, cold amusement settled over me. I can't help you with the 10 grand, Christian, I said calmly. The room went silent. The smiles dropped. What do you mean? Dad asked, his brow furrowing. You just got that bonus last month, you told us. I did, I said, but my money is tied up right now, in my own future. Sarah, Mom said, her voice taking on that scolding tone she used when I was a teenager. Family helps family. Christian is trying to build something here. I'm sure he is, I said. I looked at Willow. And I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're manifesting abundance, right? Just manifest the 10 grand. Willow's mouth dropped open. Christian's face turned red. You don't have to be a bitch about it, Christian spat out. Christian. Dad warned, but he was looking at me with disappointment, not him. Sarah, apologize to your brother's fiancé. That was uncalled for. I looked at my father, the man who left me nothing. No, I said, I don't think I will. Happy birthday, Dad. Enjoy the scotch. I turned and walked out. I heard them grumbling as I closed the front door. I heard Christian say, she's just jealous, babe. Don't worry, Mom and Dad will sort it out. I got into my car and checked my phone. I had a reminder set. Grocery delivery, Sunday 9:00 a.m. I deleted the reminder. Then I opened the grocery delivery app. I had a recurring order set for their house. Cancel recurring order. There. The food supply was cut. The utilities were cut, and I had just denied the cash infusion. The siege had begun. The week after Dad's birthday was deceptively quiet. I went to work, answered emails, and lived my life. But every time my phone buzzed, I felt a jolt of anticipation. I was waiting for the first domino to fall. It started with a text from Mom on a Tuesday. Mom, Sarah, are you okay? Usually you confirm the grocery delivery on Sunday. We didn't get anything yesterday. I stared at the screen. She didn't even ask how I was doing. She just wanted to know where the food was. Me, hey Mom. Sorry, been really busy with work. Tax season is crazy this year. I won't be able to handle the shopping for a while. The reply was almost instant. Mom, but what about dinner? Christian and Willow are coming over tonight. We have nothing in the fridge. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop. I had decided to do a little digging of my own. If Christian was asking for $10,000 for crypto mining rigs, he had to be getting that idea from somewhere. He wasn't exactly tech-savvy. He still called me when the Wi-Fi router needed restarting. I searched for Willow last name Instagram. Her profile was public. It was a curated feed of aesthetic coffee shops, inspirational quotes about hustle culture, and photos of her and Christian looking blissfully in love. But then I scrolled down. 6 months ago, she was tagging a different guy. A guy who looked eerily similar to Christian, scruffy beard, vague entrepreneur vibes. The caption read, "Building our empire together, power couple crypto future millionaires." Then, 3 months ago, right around the time she met Christian, the posts with the other guy stopped. And suddenly, she was posting about new beginnings and finding a man who supports your vision. I clicked on a link in her bio. It led to a poorly designed website for something called Lunar Wealth Academy. The site promised guaranteed returns on crypto investments if you bought their exclusive mining hardware. The price for the starter kit, exactly $9,997. It was a scam. Christian wasn't building a business. He was being funneled into a scheme by his new fiancée, who was likely getting a commission for recruiting him. And my parents were about to fund it, but the real leverage wasn't just knowing about the scam, it was knowing about the house. I pulled up the county property records. The deed was still in my parents' names. But then I saw something interesting. A lien. 2 years ago, Dad had taken out a home equity line of credit, HELOC, for $50,000. I remembered this. He told me it was for renovations. I had assumed he used it for the roof and the kitchen updates. But looking at the transaction history on the bank statements I still had access to, because I set up their online banking, I saw where the money went. It didn't go to contractors. It went to CR debt consolidation, and then a series of transfers to an account simply labeled Caleb Transfer. Wait, Caleb. Christian's middle name was Caleb. They had drained $50,000 of equity from their home to pay off Christian's debts, and they were still paying interest on it. Interest that I had been unknowingly covering by paying their other bills, freeing up their cash flow. I sat back, stunned. The betrayal went deeper than just the will. They had been actively liquidating my inheritance to bail him out for years, while I was paying to keep the lights on in a house that was slowly being hollowed out from the inside. I needed to secure my own position. I called a lawyer friend of mine, David. Hypothetically, I asked him over lunch the next day, if my parents wrote me out of a will, but I have documented proof of thousands of dollars in payments towards their property taxes and maintenance, do I have a claim? David sighed. It's tricky, Sarah. Unless you had a written agreement that those payments were a loan or an investment in exchange for equity, it's considered a gift. Parents don't owe their children an inheritance. Right, I said, stabbing my salad. Gifts. But, David added, if you stop paying now and they default on anything, well, that's not your problem. And if they gave large sums of money to your brother recently, that could be argued as an advancement on his inheritance, potentially reducing his share if the will is contested later. But honestly, the best revenge is living well and keeping your money. I intend to, I said. The first utility bill arrived at my parents' house 3 days later. I knew because I got an email notification from the electric company, paperless billing turned off. Bill mailed to service address. The clock was ticking. 2 weeks passed. The silence from my parents was deafening, punctuated only by passive-aggressive Facebook posts from Mom about ungrateful children and how hard it is to be a parent in this economy. Then the inevitable happened. It was a Tuesday evening. I was at home reading a book when my phone lit up with a call from Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom called, voicemail. Then Christian called, voicemail. Finally, a text from Dad. Dad, Sarah, pick up the phone, it's an emergency. I waited 10 minutes before replying, me, what's wrong? Is someone hurt? Dad, the power is out. The whole house is dark. The food in the fridge is going to spoil. I checked the breaker box, it's fine. Call the electric company and see what's going on. They won't talk to me because the account is in your name. I smiled. The account was in my name originally, but I had transferred the authorization to him years ago so he could handle service calls. He just never bothered to learn how. Me, I can't call them, Dad. I'm not the account holder anymore. I transferred it to you last year, remember? You just have to call the number on the bill. Dad, what bill? We haven't seen a bill in years. You pay it. Me, I stopped paying it last month. The dots bubbled for a long time, then they disappeared. Then they reappeared. Dad, you what? Why would you do that? You know we're on a fixed income. Christian and Willow are here, they can't see a thing. Willow is freaking out. Me, I'm sorry, Dad, but I had to cut expenses. I'm saving for my future. My phone immediately started ringing. It was Dad. I picked up this time. Sarah, he roared. What the hell is going on with you? You cut off our power. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Willow is here. She thinks we're destitute. Well, if you can't pay a $200 electric bill, Dad, aren't you? I asked calmly. Don't you get smart with me? He shouted. You have plenty of money. You just got a promotion. Why are you doing this to us? Because, Dad, I said, my voice hardening, I saw the will. Silence, dead silence on the other end of the line. You, what? He stammered. I saw the will, Dad, the one you and Mom signed 3 months ago, the one where you leave the house, the savings, and everything to Christian because I don't need help. The one where you explicitly state I get nothing. Sarah, that's complicated, he sputtered. We were going to explain. Explain what? That you've been using my money to subsidize your life so you could give everything to Christian. I cut him off. I've been paying your bills for 5 years. That's nearly $25,000, Dad, and you leave me nothing. Fine. If I don't need help, then you certainly don't need mine. You can't do this. Mom's voice came on the line, hysterical. We're your parents. That money was a gift. You did it out of love. And you disinherited me out of love. I countered. The Bank of Sarah is closed, Mom, permanently. If Christian is getting the house, he can pay the electric bill for it. He's the heir, right? Let him step up. He doesn't have any money, Mom cried. He's investing everything in his business. His business is a scam, Mom. I snapped. Willow is recruiting him into a pyramid scheme. He's going to lose that 10 grand, just like he lost the 5 grand I gave him for the vitamins. Don't you talk about Willow like that. Christian's voice yelled from the background. She's a visionary. You're just jealous because you're a corporate drone and we're going to be rich. Then pay the bill with your future riches, Christian. I shouted back. Goodbye. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from the sheer release of it. I had said it. It was out in the open. 10 minutes later, I got a notification from my bank. A request for $500 from Christian via a payment app. The note said, electric bill, don't be a jerk. I declined the request. Then I blocked him on the app. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in watching a ship sink in slow motion. Without my grocery runs, my parents were forced to shop for themselves. But they had grown accustomed to the premium brands I bought. I heard from a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, that she saw Mom at the local discount market, complaining loudly to the cashier about the price of eggs. The utilities were eventually turned back on. I assumed Dad dipped into his savings or maxed out a credit card to pay the reconnection fee and the overdue balance. But the financial strain was immediate. I received a long, rambling email from Dad. It wasn't an apology. It was a justification. Sarah, it read, you have to understand. Christian has had a hard life. He needs a leg up. You have a degree, you have a career. If we gave you half the house, you'd just sell it and put the money in the bank. Christian needs a home. We were trying to be fair in terms of need, not numbers. Fair in terms of need, I scoffed, reading it aloud to my empty apartment. But the real escalation came from Willow. She started posting vague, passive-aggressive TikToks. When toxic family members try to block your blessings. Cutting off negative energy to make room for abundance. In one video, she was filming in my parents' kitchen. The lights were on, but the fridge behind her looked noticeably emptier. Then, she made a mistake. She posted a video of Christian's new mining rig. It was a loud, humming box of fans and lights sitting on my dad's antique dining table. Hashtag, crypto passive income lunar wealth, invest in yourself. I zoomed in on the video. In the background on the counter was a stack of papers. One of them was a letter from a bank. It was a distinctive red logo. The bank where my parents held their mortgage. It was a foreclosure warning notice. I froze. Foreclosure. How? The house was paid off years ago. Unless the HELOC Dad took out 2 years ago wasn't the only one, or unless they had stopped paying the property taxes. I went back to the county records. I dug deeper. There it was. A second lien filed just 6 months ago for $80,000. $80,000. Where did that money go? I looked at the dates. It was right around the time Christian met Willow. I called my friend David again. Can I access my parents' credit report if I'm not on the account? Absolutely not, he said. That's illegal. Okay, I said. What if I know for a fact they are being defrauded by a family member? Then you need proof, he said, and you need to get them to see it. I needed to see those bank statements, but I couldn't go back to the house. I had surrendered my key. But then fate intervened. Mom called me. She was crying. Sarah, she sobbed, please, you have to come over. It's your father. He's having chest pains. The ambulance is on the way. Everything else vanished. The anger, the will, the money. I'm coming, I said. I raced to the hospital. Dad was stable. It was a severe angina attack brought on by stress, the doctor said. He needed rest. Mom was in the waiting room, looking small and frail. Christian and Willow were nowhere to be seen. Where is he? I asked, looking around. Christian, Mom wiped her eyes. He couldn't come. He had a very important meeting with investors for the crypto business. Willow said it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. My blood ran cold. Mom, Dad is in the hospital with heart trouble and Christian is at a meeting. He said he's doing it for us, Mom defended him weakly, to pay off the loan. What loan, Mom? I asked, sitting down next to her. The $80,000 loan. Mom went pale. How did you know? I saw the lien, I said. Mom, where is that money? She looked down at her hands. Christian said. He said if we gave him the equity, he could double it in 3 months with Willow's program. Then he'd pay off the house completely and we'd all be rich. He said he'd buy you a car to make up for the will. I closed my eyes. They had given him the equity in the house. The house they were leaving to him. He had effectively already spent his inheritance and he was losing it. Mom, I said gently, the mining rig cost $10,000. Where is the rest of the $80,000? He said there were fees, and he had to pay Willow's consulting retainer. I stood up. Willow's consulting retainer. Yes, she manages the portfolio. I pulled out my phone. I searched for Lunar Wealth Academy lawsuits. Nothing, it was too new. Then I searched for Willow's real name, which I had found on the deed transfer documents for the lien she had witnessed it. Willow Jenkins, I found a mugshot. 2 years ago, fraud, embezzlement in another state. She wasn't an influencer. She was a grifter who moved from town to town, finding families with golden child sons and bleeding them dry. I showed the phone to Mom. Mom, look at this. She stared at the mugshot. The woman looked younger, less polished, but it was undeniably Willow. Oh my God, Mom whispered. She has access to the checking account. We added her so she could manage the transfers for the business. Call the bank, I said, right now. Mom fumbled for her phone. She dialed the automated number. She put it on speaker. Current balance for checking account ending in 4490 is $12.42. Mom dropped the phone. The savings, she gasped, check the savings. I picked up the phone and navigated the menu. Current balance for savings account ending in 2218 is $0. They were wiped out. Where are they? I asked. They're at the house, Mom whispered. They're packing. Willow said they were going to a conference in Miami tomorrow. They're not going to Miami, I said, grabbing my keys. They're running. Sarah, wait, Mom cried. What are you going to do? I'm going to get your money back, I said. Or at least, I'm going to make sure Christian sees exactly who he's sleeping with. I wasn't doing it for them, not anymore. I was doing it because nobody steals from my family, even if my family stole from me first. I didn't call the police immediately. I needed to catch them in the act, or at least before they vanished. I knew if the cops showed up, Willow would play the misunderstanding card, and my parents, in their denial, might back her up. I needed irrefutable proof, and I needed it now. I drove like a maniac back to my childhood home. The house was dark, save for one light in the dining room, the makeshift crypto mining center. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic rhythm of adrenaline and dread. I parked down the street and walked up the driveway, noticing a U-Haul truck parked haphazardly on the lawn, not a moving truck for furniture. A small cargo van. I crept up to the dining room window. Inside, I saw Christian and Willow frantically shoving clothes and electronics into duffel bags. The mining rig was already disassembled, its expensive components stacked in a plastic tote. But then I saw it. On the table, next to a pile of cash, my parents' emergency stash, no doubt was a laptop. And on the screen, a travel itinerary. Flight, Miami, Cayman Islands. One way. They weren't going to a conference. They were fleeing the country. I took a picture through the window with my phone. Then I walked to the front door and didn't knock. I used the key I had secretly kept, the spare I was supposed to have returned, but forgot. I burst into the hallway, going somewhere. I asked, my voice echoing in the empty house. Christian jumped about a foot in the air, dropping a stack of cash. Willow spun around, her eyes wide, but her expression quickly shifted from shock to a sneer. "Sarah," Christian stammered, his face pale. What are you doing here? Mom said you were at the hospital." "I was," I said, stepping into the dining room. "Dad had a heart attack because he's terrified he's losing his house. Funny timing, don't you think?" "It's just stress," Willow said smoothly, stepping in front of the laptop. "He needs to relax, we're handling everything." "Handling everything by booking one-way tickets to the Caymans?" I asked, holding up my phone with the photo. Christian looked at Willow, confused. "Babe, what is she talking about? The conference is in Miami." "It's a layover, Christian," Willow snapped, her voice losing its sugary coating. "Don't be an idiot." "An idiot?" I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "That's rich coming from the woman who convinced my brother to liquidate $80,000 of home equity for a mining rig that costs $10,000 on eBay. It's proprietary hardware." Christian defended, though his voice wavered. "It mines faster." "It's a box of fans and LEDs, Christian," I shouted. "Open it up, look inside." Christian looked at the tote, then at Willow. Willow moved to block him. "Don't listen to her, babe," Willow said, her voice rising in pitch. "She's just jealous. She wants your inheritance." "What inheritance?" I stepped closer. "The house is leveraged to the hilt. The savings are gone. The checking account has $12. You've spent it all, Christian. You and your visionary fiancé here." "That's a lie," Christian yelled. "We have the returns. The account shows we've made $50,000 this month." "Show me," I challenged. "Log in right now. Transfer $5 to your bank account." Christian looked at the laptop. He hesitated. "Do it," I pressed. "If you have $50,000, transfer $5. It takes seconds." Christian moved toward the laptop. Willow grabbed his arm. "We don't have time for this, Christian. We have a flight to catch." "Let go of me," Christian said, shrugging her off. He sat down and typed furiously. "Withdrawal error," the screen flashed red. "Account locked for audit." He tried again. "Account locked." He looked up at Willow, his face crumbling. "Babe, why is it locked?" "Because the money isn't there, Christian," I said softly. "It never was. It's a Ponzi scheme. She takes your money, shows you fake numbers on a screen, and then runs before you can cash out." Willow grabbed her purse, the one stuffed with cash, and bolted for the door. "Hey!" Christian lunged, but he tripped over a duffel bag. I didn't move, I just watched her run. "Let her go," I said. "The police are already on their way." I called them from the car. Christian scrambled to the window. Outside, blue and red lights were already flashing silently down the street. I hadn't lied about that part. He turned back to me, tears streaming down his face. The golden boy, reduced to a heap on the floor of a house he had helped destroy. "Sarah," he whispered. I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I corrected him. "You wanted the shortcut. You wanted the easy money because mom and dad always gave you the easy way out. Well, welcome to the hard way. The front door burst open. Police, stay where you are. Willow was apprehended in the driveway, trying to hotwire the U-Haul because she had dropped the keys in her panic. I watched from the window as they cuffed her. Christian sat at the table, his head in his hands, sobbing. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry, Sarah." I looked at him, I felt. Nothing, no triumph, no joy, just exhaustion. "Don't apologize to me," I said, turning to leave. "Apologize to mom and dad, you just spent their retirement." The fallout was catastrophic. Willow, whose real name was Jessica Miller, was charged with multiple counts of fraud and grand larceny. It turned out Christian wasn't her only victim. She had a string of fiancés across 3 states. Christian avoided jail time by testifying against her, claiming ignorance and coercion. But the financial damage was done. The $80,000 from the HELOC was gone, funneled into offshore accounts that the authorities were struggling to trace. The mining rig was worthless scrap metal. My parents were devastated. Dad recovered physically, but he aged 10 years in a month. Mom stopped posting on Facebook. The shame was too great. They had to sell the house. With the market cooling and the liens against the property, they walked away with almost nothing after paying off the mortgages and debts. The house they had so proudly willed to Christian was gone. They moved into a small, 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Christian moved in with them, sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room because he couldn't afford rent anywhere else. He got a job at a warehouse, his first real job in years, trying to help pay off the lingering credit card debts Willow had racked up in his name. As for me, I didn't step in to save them this time. I visited them once, a month after they moved. The apartment was cramped and smelled of stale coffee. Dad sat in his recliner, staring at a blank TV screen. Mom was in the kitchen, making spaghetti with generic sauce. "Sarah," Mom said, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked tired. "It's good to see you. Stay for dinner." "I can't," I said, standing by the door. "I just came to drop off these." I handed her a folder. "What is this?" She asked. "It's the contact information for a financial advisor who specializes in debt management," I said, "and a list of food pantries in the area that don't require income verification." She flinched as if I had slapped her. "Sarah, we're family," she whispered. Couldn't you help us just a little, until we get back on our feet?" I looked at them. I looked at Christian, who was sitting on the couch, unable to meet my eyes. "I did help you," I said. "For 5 years, I paid your bills. I bought your food, and in return, you decided I wasn't worth anything to you because I was stable." "We didn't mean it like that," Dad protested from the chair. "We were just trying to protect your brother." "And look how that turned out," I said quietly. "You protected him right into poverty." I opened the door. "I'm still stable, Dad. I'm doing just fine, and I intend to stay that way, by keeping my distance." "So that's it," Mom cried, tears spilling over. "You're just going to abandon us." "No," I said, stepping into the hallway. "I'm just finally accepting the terms of your will. I'm living my own life without your help, and you're living yours without mine." I closed the door. I walked down the hallway, the sound of my heels clicking on the linoleum. I got into my car, drove to my condo, my fully paid-off, quiet, peaceful condo, and poured myself a glass of expensive wine. I checked my bank account. The balance was higher than ever. I was finally free.